This is the Wonderkid Jonny Storm, also known as the Unofficial Legend, and you are listening to the Morecambe Wrestling Podcast.
Yes, indeed you are. Welcome to the first star guest interview on the Morecambe Wrestling Podcast. And what better way to begin? I couldn't think of anybody better than my old mate, the Wonderkid Jonny Storm himself. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good, Mr. Lambert. It's great to see you, man. I'm glad you're branching out into other things. You've always been a man of fingers in many pies, but this could be the big one for you, mate.
The radio. Yeah, I love it. I'm enjoying it. Really enjoying it, actually. So it is really good. But you're still going strong and amazingly well after how long in the wrestling business?
This year's my 30th.
So it was 95 was it 95 when you started, or was it 96, 95? Yeah.
And I'm only 35 years old, so it's a good
Indeed.
Good
you
deal.
Will still be the Wonderkid when you're 90, mate.
I'm trying, man.
You're looking amazing. What is your secret? What is your secret to your youthful looks?
Timote, pop up a mountain stream, and that's a Rick Mail reference, by the way, which will get a lot out of me in my book.
Speaking of which, and here it is.
Beautiful thing. Beautiful piece of art, literature, encyclopedia, history, and even you made the cut, Greg. Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Very kind, by the way, doing that. That's really nice of you.
Absolutely. Well deserved. You've been an influential part of my career during those parts back in the day. So I did want to show appreciation and love to a lot of the people who have contributed to the book. And I was so glad you agreed to do it, because coming from someone like you who knows a lot of history of British wrestling, especially, I think that added a lot of credibility to it in the end.
It's a great book. How you felt about the response? It's been, universal praise, hasn't it?
Overwhelming, man. Like, I started it 3 years ago. I tell everybody this, and I wasn't really, it was during COVID, and I knew my 30th anniversary was coming up in a few years at that time. So I just sort of had the ideas and just sort of did it willy-nilly. But it wasn't until like the last sort of year and a half that I focused on it. Not full time, but like I dedicated hours to it, week on, week out. And I thought it was good, but I only really originally did it for me, just to celebrate my 30th year. I thought I could maybe get some made up, like, you get a T-shirt made up and sell it at shows. But the response I've had has just been from fans and peers. Everybody has just been overwhelming. I'm absolutely shocked. But now it's been out about a month. And when I think about it, like, a book is a very personal thing. And it's something different as well. And some people ask me about audiobooks or ebooks and stuff like that. But for me personally, I wanted the physical copy because I like the physical copy. I don't want it to be an audiobook that's just forgotten about once you've listened to it once and it's just in a load of files with everything else. I like having a book on the shelf that I can see. Do you know what I mean? I might not read it again or something, but it's part of my like wrestling collection, if you know what I mean, with all my other wrestling books. So that's what I wanted it to be in people's lives. And I think people appreciate that. And the fact that it is an autobiography, like I said, is a lot more personal and intimate, which hopefully shows a side of wrestling from my career that hasn't been seen before.
I can highly recommend it. If you haven't got it, make sure you get it. The Unofficial Legend, Wonderkid Jonny Storm, an unexpected professional wrestling journey from a gentleman who has travelled all over the world, worked for most of the top wrestling promotions all over the world over a long period of time. It's a great book. It's really funny as well. Lots of hilarious stories and some really nice things about Morecambe, which is what we're mainly going to talk about today, Jonny, because you're a former heavyweight champion, British heavyweight champion in Morecambe. A lot of really great memories in Morecambe, and you talk with a lot of reverence and good feelings about your memories of Morecambe in the book.
Apart from being a beautiful town, albeit a million miles away, as you'll read in the book, from where I lived, the shows were worth it at the end of the day. For me, even back then, when we were doing it in the early 2000s, or early to, what was it, 2000 and up to 10? There was a few incarnations, wasn't there?
There was a few incarnations. I'm going to talk about when I think your first match was in Morecambe in a minute, but you might correct me, but we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah. It was the noughties, yes.
Yeah, okay, it was the noughties. So, like, Yeah, aside from the drive, it was always somewhere I'd absolutely love to go to because the venue was magnificent. The Morecambe Dome, which is a fantastic venue, perfect for wrestling. It was just, it held just the right amount of fans. You'd always do really, really well there. And in my book, they were kind of older school fans, even though we were the newer school guys, if you know what I mean, because even though it was the noughties, I came through a little bit before that, and there was even sort of older fans. And there's a contrast of fans over the years. You know, there's the really old school ones who, like, dare I say it, believed in the wrestling. And, you know, obviously nowadays it's completely different with the show being a bit of an open book. But I'd say these were in the middle. So you get a lovely mix of, like, some of the more internet fans and the general public who were just there to have an amazing time, believe and enjoy, and just get engrossed in the action. And that was quite rare, apart from a select few halls back in the day. And Morecambe was definitely one of them.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, 2002 is a massive year in your career. And that's when we first crossed paths, because of the big revival show that you were part of, which was on the Bravo channel. And I went to see that as a fan and saw you and Jodie, your great friend Jodie Fleisch, have this incredible ladder match. And that just opened my eyes to what British wrestling was like in the 21st century. And then the FWA is a big thing at that point. You wrestle AJ Styles later that year at Uprising 1 at the York Hall, Bethnal Green. We crossed paths at a show in the summer, which was my first ever show for Dan Reed. I don't know if you remember that show in Ipswich.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Don't know if you remember that one.
Robbie Brookside was on it.
Say again?
Was it a tournament with Robbie Brookside?
Incidentally, it was a tournament with Robbie Brookside. And you won it. And I thought, oh, Johnny, massive hero. Brookside, usually a massive hero, but the crowd hate him here.
Yeah.
And that planted a seed. And later that year, the company that was running the Morecambe Dome at that time was TWA, run by Scott Conway.
That's right.
Now, I think you might have wrestled before then, but I think I was sat at ringside watching your first match in Morecambe that year for TWA, for Scott Conway, 2002. Do you remember a guy called D-Ron Rules?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you wrestled him.
Was it busy?
Does that ring any bells?
Well, there's one Morecambe show I remember doing for Scott, and the reason it sticks in my mind is because it was a terrible house. There wasn't many people in at all, yeah? Maybe, I don't know, 50 people or something. But I said to Scott that night, this is the reason I remember it, don't give me any money for it, because he lost his ass on the door. I don't know whether that was the one or not, though.
It might have been. Scott never had a lot of time for me. Possibly for that reason, because the previous show he'd done, I was like writing for a website at the time, and I'd written quite a scathing review of the show, which I felt quite bad about. And I remember on the night, Scott wasn't going to let me in. He was on the door saying, "You're not coming in after what you wrote last time." But he did let me in. And I remember that show was ironically, was a really, really good show. And I remember you having a great match with D-Ron Rules.
Yeah, that's the thing. There was a lot of good shows back in the day. Like, it's such a forgotten part of British wrestling history. I don't really know why, because there was the talent. We always had the talent here, again, as I mentioned in the book, but there was next to no exposure once it was off TV. So it was just like the touring circus, like a show that come to town and could never get any real traction.
Absolutely. And ironically, the thing I actually learned from Scott and the TWA, and you'll know this for working for Scott all over the country, but it was very much geared towards families.
100%.
And that was, again, that stuck in my mind. I thought, right, that's what the Morecambe fans want to see. They want to see strong good guys against strong bad guys. And that type of family.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that was kind of learned from Scott. FWA, though, I started promoting with FWA the following year, and you were a massive part of the FWA at the time. And you had some incredible matches for the FWA in Morecambe. One against D'Lo Brown. Do you remember that one? What, got any memories of wrestling D'Lo at the Morecambe Dome? Would
you be mad at me if I said no? It's only that you just said it.
We
It's
took
only
D'Lo
because you
out.
said it that I was
We
like,
took D'Lo out for a night out in Morecambe after that match, so it's stuck in our minds. You see, so
was this
yeah.
during the celebrity wrestling time then?
No, it's before.
Oh my God.
It's the
I
year
remember
before.
it now you say it, but I don't remember anything about the match.
Okay, sorry, D'Lo. But you will remember the next show. The next show that year, you lost a loser leaves FWA match to James Ty.
Yes.
In Morecambe.
That's right.
When you started doing the famous vignettes on Morecambe Beach. Can you tell us about them?
Absolutely. I was off to Thailand for Scott Conway, who just emigrated over there, and he was going to do a 3-month tour where he lived in Thailand. So when he offered it to me, it was a bit of a no-brainer to like go to Thailand to wrestle. Do you know what I mean? So we done the whole storyline, and we thought it would be funny. Was it your idea?
No,
I don't know whose idea it was.
I wasn't involved at the time. No, not
I'll
in that.
take all the credit
Not on the
for it.
booking. Not on the booking side.
Edit that then, say it was all my idea, because it probably was then. But just to do some vignettes from the Morecambe Beach, pretending to be in Thailand, Jonny Storm keeping up to date with the FWA and XWA crew and everything. And yeah, it was pretty funny. And I think it came off really well and sort of kept me in the loop while I was away.
So all these little segments appeared on FWA TV, which was on the wrestling channel on Sky at the time. Supposedly Jonny Storm in Thailand, but it was actually Morecambe Bay.
Unlike wrestling or wrestlers to lie about anything in the wrestling world, is it?
It was convincing, though.
Yeah, well, I hope so. That Morecambe Beach is just like Phuket.
It's not bad. Yeah, it's not bad.
It isn't bad. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Well, I'll take your word for it because I've never been to Phuket. So
the weather's slightly different, though.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah. Then you were sort of off FWA for a while, but then you came back. Great storyline about you getting reinstated with a petition. But in Morecambe, sort of your next big appearance in Morecambe, this would be after Celebrity Wrestling on ITV, which we don't need to talk about because there's no Morecambe connection.
There's a chapter in the book though, which you can read about when you buy it.
Which is well worth reading. Do you remember the FWA, the British Interfederation Cup, when FWA started wrestling against other promotions, and we had a big 4-on-4 tournament against All-Star Wrestling at the Morecambe Dome?
Yep. I've still got the program for it somewhere, or it might be the All-Star program, because there's a really dodgy picture of me looking like a girl with really long hair and like red lips, like looking like I got lipstick on or something. I'm not sure why that is.
I don't know why that is, because you'd shaved your head long before this.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They're using like stock images from 20 years ago. You know what I mean? Already by then.
Do you remember that was the night the FWA title belt got stolen at ringside during the melee as they're celebrating your win?
Oh, God, yeah. Did you get it back?
No.
Well, if that doesn't say what Morecambe's all about, then I don't know what does. I'm only joking. I love you, Morecambe.
No. But in all seriousness, on the positive note, that was the first time I remember the crowd was so happy that you'd scored the winning pinfall for Team FWA against the hated Robbie Brookside, because we brought Robbie Brookside in as a heel, remembering what had happened in Ipswich a few years ago. They actually invaded the ring in delight, and you were absolutely swamped by fans. That must have been an incredible feeling.
For me, that's the best feeling, when you can get raw emotion out of people. You can still get it nowadays, but it's a lot harder to come by. Like we said, wrestling's more an open book now, but you still do get some of those venues where I just want a fan to come in and enjoy themselves, get engrossed in the action like you would a movie. And if your emotions take you to run into the ring in celebration and high-fiving the wrestlers and getting in the bad guys' faces, then there's no other feeling like that.
You had a massive rivalry with Brookside, which culminated in you beating him on the first XWA show. Got the poster in the background, the Easter Saturday Showdown, sold out Morecambe Dome, 2007. What were your memories of working with Robbie, who's an absolute British wrestling legend, now a coach in NXT?
Yeah, I knew Robbie a bit already because I was on the All-Star circuit, and obviously Scott Conway's TWA circuit, where Robbie was like the locker room leader. He was the head honcho, what he said goes. And it was wrestling him a few times on those shows was probably the best pedigree of experience you could get, because he was so revered in this country for his psychology and his charisma and his connection to the crowd. Just being in the ring with that is a hell of a learning experience. And I had a taste of that a little bit already by being on the shows. So when we brought it to Morecambe, I knew we could tear the house down. Like you say, he was a huge baby face everywhere he went. But I knew he could work heel because I'd seen him do it a few times on these shows, because he was so over all the time for a long time. He was a heel sometimes on the later shows that I was doing. So the formula was perfect. And to be in the ring with him and just have that knowledge, or to be backstage with him and see how he carries himself and stuff like that, was a real eye-opener for me once you're out onto the circuit, and a learning curve. The only thing I would say is you don't want to take that penalty kick he does to the back, because that is a full-on penalty kick to the back. And he's an Everton fan who don't really know how to take penalties, so I don't know where he got it from, but it hurt. Bleep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'm with you certainly on Robbie as a fountain of knowledge, because I used to, when I would book Robbie for shows, I used to ring him on a, I think it was on a landline. Robbie never had a mobile back in the noughties. Robbie was not an internet person at all, and we'd have like really long conversations. Nothing about wrestling. It'd just be me listening to him talking little stories and things that sort of stick in my mind, but also talking about football, because I'm a Liverpool fan, as well as Morecambe. Thanks, Johnny, for the 5-0 thrashing the other week, by the way.
I was going to message you, but because the scoreline was so devastatingly bad, I thought you'd be too upset to respond. So, is what it is.
I always think of Chelsea whenever, I always think of you or Shah Samuels whenever it's Chelsea v Morecambe. It's happened twice in recent years, and neither.
We gave you a decent first half, though, didn't we?
We saved a penalty.
Yeah, we give you a little tease. It was like a wrestling match, bringing you up and then just bringing you right back down where you should be.
Crashing down. But yes, used to talk to Robbie a lot. That day of the FWA All-Star show, Liverpool won the FA Cup, so I remember just walking in and just like grinning like a Cheshire cat and walking straight up to Robbie, and he wasn't happy to see me at all. But he was absolutely great to learn from. And I don't know, I know you don't like breaking the fourth wall, but one of the stories that really sticks in my mind from that match against Robbie, and I don't know if you remember this, but the finish of that match wasn't supposed to be the finish. I don't know if you remember this at all. You had him in a small...
It's when you say this stuff to me, then it comes into my mind. So keep giving it to me.
So you had him in a small package. Referee counts 1, 2. The sound guy thinks he's counted 3, plays the music, and the crowd goes absolutely mental, thinking, that's it, you've won the title, and we just ran with it. But the match was actually, I don't think I've ever spoken about this before, but the match was actually supposed to finish with you hitting the Wonder Whirl on Robbie. And I remember Robbie storming backstage, and I couldn't help but thinking, is he working because he's angry because he's lost the title, or is it partly because he was upset because the finish wasn't quite what it was supposed to be? I don't know.
Oh, you don't know? Oh, God.
No.
I don't know.
No.
He was probably happy he didn't have to take the Wonderwell finish, to be honest with you.
I thought you might say that. But yeah, again...
Who was the sound guy? Fire him.
It's a bit late
was
now.
It Mark? It wasn't Mark, was it?
I couldn't possibly throw my best friend under the bus, Johnny.
Oh,
I couldn't possibly do that.
Mark.
Anyway, again, they invaded the ring in Delight for the second time. So that was, again, an amazing, amazing night. You went on to have a rivalry with Johnny Fear, where he was on an undefeated streak and you beat him to end the streak, and he went off on one and became obsessed with you. And then you beat him again in a loser leaves XWA match, which was, I think that absolutely made him. I think that storyline made him, because he went on to become like the big star in Morecambe. But that was thanks to the incredible matches that he had with you. What's your memories of those?
I do remember a few of those, actually. That was all your storyline stuff, man. So credit to you for putting all that together, because you could see something in Johnny. And at the time, there wasn't that many big sort of muscly guys around, was there? But he had the size, and he had a really good look about him, and he could work as well. So he was local, wasn't he, to you?
Yeah, he moved to Morecambe, so he lived in Morecambe and still does.
Yeah, so it just made sense to have like the local boy be pushed down the road, and to be in there with the more established guys at the time was obviously the ideal thing to do. The thing I remember most about Johnny Fear, and it isn't in ring, believe it or not, is we were staying over somewhere one night. I don't know if it was before one of your shows or not, but he was with like his girlfriend and her mum. And I went into their room to like watch some sort of, it must have been wrestling on TV or something in the hotel room. And like every minute he would get up and go out the door of the hotel room and then come back in like 2 seconds later. And he got to like the 10th time. And I'm like, where are you going all the time? Yeah. And what it was is he was such a polite young man. He was passing wind, shall we say, so much that he wouldn't do it in front of his girlfriend or her mum. So he'd go stand outside the door, let rip, and then come back in.
I will never look at the psychotic warrior in the same way again after that.
That's your champion, mate.
He was our champion. Yes, absolutely. And there's a lovely picture of him in the background as well now. So, yes. Yeah. That is an amazing story.
It didn't make the book, unfortunately. You know, I can't put everything in. Maybe in part 2, the revenge.
Says a lot about Johnny's manners, though.
Yeah.
Says a lot about him. That does.
True say.
You were such a. I mean, you held the XWA title for about 16 months, and you were such, as we talked about, so incredibly popular. Probably the first sort of mega babyface, huge fan favorite of the era I was involved in wrestling in Morecambe. Why do you think that was? What was the connection? What do you think made you so loved by the Morecambe audience?
I think it's just that thing that some people are born with, that you can connect to people, that unexplainable factor, if you know what I mean. Not to blow myself up or anything, but I think I've always, since day one back in Hammerlock, been able to relate to an audience. A lot of it's my personality, which is very similar to what I am in real life, and I think that realness translates in the ring, and maybe a bit of, they can see I'm having a good time in there, which brings them in that it's okay to have a good time as well, if you know what I mean. And like I say, Morecambe being that sort of hybrid in between the smarter fans and the general public is the perfect mix for me. I think for me, that's my ideal crowd.
Steve Corino says it best in your book, actually, who also wrestled in Morecambe. We'll talk about that on a future podcast, no doubt. Because he says there's just a really nice energy about you, and he says there should be more Jonny Storms in life. That was nice.
I don't know about that. One is enough. Plus, I want all the copyrights to the Jonny Storm book, so no one else can put a claim into that. But Steve's lovely. Steve's such a good guy. Like you touch on it there. So many foreign people, wrestlers, male, female, whatever, who I've encountered over my career. When I was writing the book, I just shot him a message. I probably haven't spoke to him for years, and just said, look, I'm writing my book. Write anything you want and just send it to me and I'll put it in there. There's no editing or anything like that. And like you say, things like that from someone of the stature of Steve Corino it again blew my mind. I want people to read my book and just be like, oh, damn, he's in it. Oh, damn, he's in it now. British, American, Japanese, reporters, historians. I wanted the whole thing covered, because the concept of the book, if you haven't read it, is it's a court case to prove whether I am this elusive British wrestling legend, which I've been called before. So the reason I call it the unofficial legend is that's because what I am now. And by the time you've read the book, it's up to you to decide whether all the evidence I've produced in this court case proves whether I am this British wrestling legend or not. And I thought that was a really cool concept, because I'm a big movie fan, I'm a big music fan, I'm a big comedy fan, which I'm sure you are as well, Greg. So there's a lot of references to movies, music, and film in there, which I hope will get a kick out of people as well. An unexpected professional wrestling journey is obviously taken from the Lord of the Rings.
Yes. Yeah.
So Morecambe made the cut in that unexpected professional wrestling journey. That's all I'll say, which is definitely an unexpected part.
Well, seeing as though, you know, you've wrestled, you know, for TNA and Ring of Honor and in Qatar and Thailand, as you've mentioned before, and all over Europe, it's an absolute honour for Morecambe to be mentioned in the book. Just one more thing on the book, Johnny. What would you say? I know you won't want to tease too much. People have got to buy it. But what's your favourite story in the book?
Probably the Qatar chapter, because it's not, well, it's actually the Middle East in general. It's not just about Qatar. I call the chapter Middle Earth. Again, another reference to Lord of the Rings. But there's so many stories, funny, crazy, unbelievable, some might say, in that chapter, that it's just, I can honestly say everything in that book is 100% true, because in my mind, if I just said one thing that was a lie or was wrong, the whole book falls apart. And the very, very start of the book, there's an excerpt taken out, which I'm sure you read, Greg, about an AK-47. And that is the little hook that I wanted to get people to be like, damn, is this a wrestling book or what? And that all comes out and revealed in the Middle Earth chapter.
Make sure you read it. Yes, it is intriguing. There's no doubt about it. And you're still going strong, Johnny. Were you wrestling in a church the other day, did I see?
Yeah, a full-on live working church. There was prayers before the show, and there was prayers during intermission at the show.
Really?
100%. A reverend was there on the mic doing the whole thing. The concept's fantastic. Like, you think how many churches there are in the world, let alone just England, and if they like the wrestling and it does well and it brings, I think their whole concept is, if it just brings one person to a show and it makes them think about what they're practicing, and they maybe join the congregation or something like that, then it's job done. So it was an experience. It was an amazing experience. I was a bit worried about, because I haven't been to church for years, but I remember it being pews, you know, those big, long, wooden, heavy things. I thought, how are they going to get the ring in? But the guy who runs it, a guy called Gareth, he was telling me that a lot of churches nowadays, they don't have pews anymore, just for the sheer fact of, you know, they're so large and uncomfortable. So it's like comfortable chairs. So they can move these chairs to make that space in the middle of the actual church and put the ring in. It's phenomenal. To be in such a hallowed place is it was a new one for me. I've been in churches before wrestling, but not a fully working church, so it's very cool.
Well, amen to that. Absolutely.
That's what I said.
You've done so much in your career, Johnny, and just as we sort of wrap things up here on the Morecambe Wrestling Podcast, is there anything that you haven't done that you would still like to do?
I'd like
it can't be much.
I'd like to go back to America. I'd like to go back to Japan, just to do it again in a later stage of my career, because obviously I had all these experiences when I was a younger guy, and obviously I've changed over the years to a certain extent. So I'd like to view it through my eyes now, if you know what I mean. The older, wiser professional wrestler, and I'd like to see more places of, you know, so many times when you go to a show, you fly in, you wrestle, and you fly out. I want to actually go and experience the actual culture in the countries. Some places I've done it, obviously, but there's a few places where I'd like to go back to and do it again, if you know what I mean. So not so many. Yeah, I can't really think of many places that I haven't been that I'm desperate to go back to. Yeah,
So
I'm desperate to go back to Morecambe, but the Dome is gone now, right? They knocked it down, yeah?
They demolished it in 2011.
Yeah, that's a sad time. And I don't know if anyone runs in Morecambe anymore, but if they do, book me. Or if they don't, Greg, you need to run another show in Morecambe and bring back the old boys. And if you do, we'll come on live on the Morecambe Wrestling podcast. How's that?
Sounds like a plan. Well, Odyssey Pro Wrestling, who run very successfully at the Carlton, or what was the Carlton, now the Alhambra, in Morecambe. Hope you're listening. The Wonder Kid is still style in action. And definitely the unofficial legend. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you, bro.